It's not what I meant, but you know what I mean.
Eh.
Right? Okay.
Wait a minute. You know, this is, excuse me, a damn fine cup of coffee.
Good morning.
Good morning, Andrew. How you doing?
I'm all right, Alex. How are you?
Good. It's already the third session.
It is our third session. We're a bit late again.
Yeah, I think now it's gonna be the usual.
Yeah, partially our fault, partially not.
Well, partially not. Mostly not, actually.
Well.
Yeah.
Well, most importantly, it is the third show, and for those on podcast, the third episode of Neon Sunrise.
Yeah, on the Chasing Tell channel. I know it's a bit confusing, but
so to back it up a second.
Yeah.
For those listening on the radio, you can now catch this show as recorded here in the studio on iTunes,
SoundCloud and YouTube.
SoundCloud, YouTube, and iTunes.
Right.
Just put Neon Sunrise into any of those, and it'll pop up. If you're on YouTube or iTunes, the artist or page will be Chasing Tales. Don't be confused. The show is Neon Sunrise and will always be titled as such. But yeah, so you can catch it if you're not around to catch the live show. You can always catch us on podcasts.
Yeah.
So yeah, keep an eye out for that. And listen to us natter away while you're walking home from work. If you want to do that.
If you want to do that. I mean, it's an hour-long podcast about us talking about geeky stuff.
An hour-long podcast isn't that long.
It's not that long. I think it's pretty usual for
It's
a
a pretty average length,
It is
and
a
there are
pretty
some which
average
go a
length.
lot longer.
I know.
Which will be addressed in part of our conversations today. So our topics for today. First off, we're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons. Now,
right. Do we start with Dungeons and Dragons, or do we?
I think we should just dive right in with that.
With that, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I want to leave the second thing to later on. So yeah, we're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons. It's its rise in popularity, it is.
Why did it rise in popularity so much now?
For sure, that there's a resurgence in its popularity and people playing it. Talk a bit about what it actually is, because a lot of people have heard of it but don't really know what it is.
Wait, is that the game from Stranger Things they play at the beginning of the first season?
It is that. And that is the entirety of the game.
And you're like, yeah, you just roll a d20 and then you wait.
You have to be in a basement.
You have to be in a basement.
It's always a Demogorgon.
And you're only boys. That's it.
Well, yeah, girls can't play.
Girls can't play. You mean, can you roll dice? No.
No, nonsense. So yeah, we're going to talk a bit about that, about what the game is, that kind of stuff. Afterwards, we're going to talk briefly-ish. I don't have
that many
hours of things today, but I do want to briefly talk about a game that I just finished playing at home, called Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice.
Right.
So we'll talk a bit more about that before we get into that part of the conversation. Yeah, very interesting game. And I think one of the most accurate portrayals of mental illness, mental conditions in I think any media I've seen. But we'll get into that later on. But for now, we're going to dive straight in with some Dungeons and Dragons.
All right. Cool. So coming back to Dungeons and Dragon, we both play it.
We do.
We've been playing it for how long now?
It's a couple of years now.
Now.
Not as long as your old veterans.
No, I mean we both when we met each other we decided to play it, and we had this idea of what Dungeons and Dragon was.
So what was that idea for you?
For me, it was mostly it wasn't that many numbers involved in it. I think it was mostly an idea of just being around a table and someone is telling you a story and you are involved in it right there. That's what I thought it was from the different TV shows that I saw and those kind of things. So I had no clear idea. I just knew it was this kind of a storytelling thing you had with people. I didn't know there were pen and paper involved. I didn't know there were dices involved. I just thought, you talk and you do something and then it happens and then the story is just written like this.
Which isn't really very far from the truth.
No, it's not.
Before I got into to playing, to having a look at what it actually is, I saw it on Big Bang Theory. I saw it mentioned in Stranger Things.
Yeah.
It was always this thing in my head that people with neckbeards and no hope at intimate relations would do in basements.
Maybe they do. I don't know.
I mean, I think that's some of them, but there's dice involved. It's
a
really
lot
nerdy.
of dice involved.
That's all I really knew of it.
Yeah.
I didn't know a single person growing up that played.
I think it wasn't that big a thing 10 years ago in Europe.
Possibly. Also, I think, along with, general geek culture stigma, the ones that did probably didn't just broadcast it.
I think one of the reasons why now it's become such a huge thing, and we'll go deeper in it, but just to bounce back on what you just said, it's because the geek culture became such a popular thing now.
Yeah, it's weird.
It's this weird thing where if you're a geek, if you're a nerd, it's the weirdest thing to say, but you're actually cool. You can't see me, but I'm making brackets with my hands.
I have my own problems with labels like geek and nerd and things.
I know. That's why I put the brackets on. So we should.
And as well as like things being cool.
No. It's words. It's not what I meant, but you know what I mean. Right? Okay.
Audio friendly.
I meant maybe like popular, not cool.
Yeah.
Something
I do know what you mean. So yeah, like I think a lot of the stigma has been removed, or is on the way out.
Defo.
I think and that is down to mostly representation and like not just in a it's what nerds do in basements kind of representation, but like. Hey, just characters.
Why does there have to be a basement?
Because that's where Dungeons and Dragons happens. It's called Dungeons and Dragons, and we don't have dungeons now. So you have to
go to a dungeon? Whoa! Yeah, no. Depends what you do in your sex life, I guess.
Okay, well, we'll leave that right there. But so over the last 10 so years, games have become more and more popular. Fantasy films and like action hero movies and comics of like action films were there, and then people put superheroes in them, and people were like, oh crap, these are really, really cool.
Yeah, it's
And then like I think through that kind of action genre, fantasy and comic books and all that kind of stuff became like, oh, this is just really cool storytelling and really cool action stuff.
I think it's also the part where, as I said earlier, it's like the geek culture and the culture around that comics has become popular enough. And it was very popular, I think. It was already something big. It became mainstream.
It had a strange kind of popularity, though. I mean,
right, it used to. But what I mean is, like, it went from this segregated part of the culture where you're like, okay, so that kind of people like that, to what it is now, to basically most of the culture when it comes to movies, when it comes to books, when it comes to, games and all that. It's now such a huge part of the culture.
It is, yeah.
That it has become basically the popular culture in those industries.
Yeah, I think it's been. I don't know if it's. I'm sure it's a combination of
a combination of a lot of things.
A combination of as we grow up, and grow older and see more people and encounter more kinds of people, as well as a kind of a change in the stigma of the general populace. As we go from where we were, like you're in high school, there's the sport kids, there's the geek kids.
Yeah, exactly.
Now in university, at least, and in 2018, and I'm sure it's a mixture of both of those things. Those labels mean nothing.
Exactly.
If you like sports, you like a sport. That doesn't define you or anything. And if you like playing video games,
you play
cool.
Video
Yeah.
Yeah. No.
There's no labels needed, which I
exactly
think gives a lot of people a bit more of a free entry. A bit less hesitation when trying out these new things.
Yeah.
And I think
which for example, we've met a lot of people who whenever you say the word Dungeon and Dragon would just rear back saying, whoa, that's the geek part of it. Like, I don't want to be any part of this. I mean, I've met people personally saying, like, just because it has this connotation of being geek and nerdy, it still has like this effect on some people. That
it does, for sure.
Rear back saying, no, I don't want to be part of this geek culture.
Now, it was a bit before our time, but there was kind of an occasion known as the Satanic Panic.
Yeah,
and it's when, because these kind of back when being nerdy and geek was basically a cult. It was basically
this
very frowned upon dark, mysterious thing. So
Sure.
when you had these small groups of people meeting in basements and spending hours at a time together, people that didn't want to learn about it and people who didn't understand what it was immediately assumed it must be Satanism. And not that Satanism's bad or anything. You should research it. Satanism's actually pretty dope.
Yeah, we'll not talk on live radio how satanism is actually okay.
Dude, read it.
All right.
Read their teachings, then comment on it. Like, it's actually really interesting. Like, I'm not a Satanist.
You'll
or
see
anything.
me next week with blood of innocence on my hands.
There's no blood of innocence. Read
No
about
blood?
Satanism.
You're right.
It's really cool.
I think I heard something like that. Like, it's actually okay.
Yeah, it's just another religion, but with like different teachings. However, it's way more centered on loving yourself rather than loving some ambient entity
All right.
out there, which I think is way more important. Like self-love is
That's
super important.
Yeah, self-love. Just grow your ego.
I mean, take care of your mental health.
All right, to come back to the subject.
Yeah.
All right, so how would you explain Dungeons and Dragon for someone that has never heard of it?
So this is a conversation I've had a lot. Now,
Right.
you've encountered
so
people
many
that
so many times.
you've met people that kind of immediately recoil. The majority of my experiences is people that say, oh, I've heard of that, and that's normally because they've heard it mentioned in Big Bang Theory, whatever else.
Yeah.
And I've heard of that. I don't really know what it is, but I kind of like fantasy stuff. I like Lord of the Rings, and what is it?
Wow, you get easy guys to talk to.
I just don't talk to that many people. So what Dungeons and Dragons basically is a tabletop role-playing game. Now, I'm sure
Take a notebook, guys, and just write everything
for
down.
those of you that aren't familiar, that's alien language, I know, but
yeah, let's
it literally
yeah.
does break down to you sit at a table with your friends rather than like a console or a TV, and you roleplay. And now, before you immediately start assuming that is either LARPing or sexual, neither of those things are bad, but this isn't the topic of this
And you
show.
don't have to, and no, you don't dress up. No.
I mean, you can do, but most people don't.
What? No. Yeah.
So an average session
people don't.
looks like about 5 or 6 people around a table. One person has a screen in front of them. There's chips and dips. There's drinks. There's often alcohol.
All right. Though I know, but do explain what a screen is, because like
It's
it
just-
could be
I mean, it's a screen. A screen
It's
is
a
a screen.
screen.
It blocks the rest of the people from seeing
right.
what
so
you're
it's
doing.
just, yeah.
And what the game effectively is the narrator or the dungeon master is the person who runs the game. Like, you can think of this person effectively as the computer when you're playing a computer game. That they narrate the world, they describe what's around you, they describe what everyone who isn't you is doing and what they say. They provide the basis of the story, but you, the players, are the characters.
Right. So it's basically it's basically you are being told a story with friends, and you and your friends are the characters in that story, and you can influence what's going to happen in the world. So you can only control yourself as in real life, and the game master, the person who has the screen and who is telling you, the narrator, the one who's telling you the story, is going to see how it influenced the world around you.
For sure. It's very similar to if you ever watched Lord of the Rings or read it or any other fantasy setting.
Yeah.
Or not fantasy. Like, it is very, very fluid and versatile in that. The narrator, I would argue, doesn't tell you a story. The narrator gives you a situation, and you, the protagonists of this story, make the story.
Right. You're more thrown into a world, and then you do something about
you
it.
react to these events. You do whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
And together it becomes this collaborative storytelling
Yeah,
medium.
I think that's the most important thing. It's collaborative storytelling,
Yeah.
where the narrator might try to put you on path, put you on different stories, but in the end, the players have the last word. And if they want to do, if they want to bring down a dragon on the city, or not follow that lead and go on another quest, or just to start a flower shop, they can.
They can.
You
Like,
can do whatever you want.
I think relating it to computer games is probably one of the easier ways to go at it, because most people have played it. It's
Yeah.
kind of like whenever you're playing a game like Skyrim or Fallout, whatever else, and you're given a set of options, like,
Like
say
Mass
this,
Effect.
do that.
Yeah.
It's like that, except there's no option tree. You just do whatever you
Right,
want.
it's like typing it. Well, it's even better than that. I think the moment where going back to what we talked in the beginning of why it's such a big thing, right? When it comes to games, you have an increase in games of like sandboxes and RPGs that are very, very important. The community of gamers love RPGs and sandbox.
Yeah.
So like GTA or like Skyrim, Fallout.
It's just
those kind of
increasing
games.
that freedom.
And it's always the same thing, which is the problem is you can do a lot of things in those games, but it's always in a very closed area of possibilities.
Yeah.
In Skyrim you can do a lot of things. You can kill people in the streets, whatever. You can shout. You can get out of prison. You can transform into werewolves, but it's still in that area of possibilities.
Yeah.
And Dungeon and Dragon is that thing where you have no limit whatsoever on what you want to do.
Well, within reason.
Within reason.
There is
right.
There's magic in the world.
I mean,
but
Dungeon
there are
Dragon
rules to it all.
Right, but it depends how you play Dungeon and Dragon.
That's true.
Everyone plays Dungeon and Dragon differently. You have rules, of course, to make the game more realistic. Some people follow it. We personally follow it very clearly, very on the mark.
Yeah. So to give some reference,
Right, go ahead.
we play together.
do.
There is a group of 6 of us in total.
6. 6.
Yeah, we got with Rod now.
Oh yeah.
We play. I'm the dungeon master, so I create a setting, a world, characters, and stories. Effectively, I create events which I hope.
Events. I think events is better than stories.
Yeah, I create events and situations which will provoke the players, who are the protagonists of this story. I create events and things to compel them and instigate them to undergo their own adventures and their own stories, to accomplish what those characters want.
Right. I think that's good. And I'm a player. I've been playing. I've DM'd a few times, but I'm better as a player. And I think the best part of that is when your player is writing a story with your character. So as you don't have it's not writing a story and just typing words on your computer screen and just typing the story you want to type. Because here you only control your character and not the world around him. So what you want to do is make choices for that character. You have to understand how the character, and I think what's really great about D&D is playing characters that are very conflicted or very different from you.
Different from you is important.
So you can have growth of the character, and it's not just this character went from point A to point B, became the savior of the kingdom. No, that's less interesting. Mentally, how does he go from point A to point B?
Yeah,
and all that change.
You can totally just play yourself.
You can totally
it's
play
just
yourself.
you with a couple extra skills, and you can cast spells. But one of the really interesting factors of the game is I think two main things which kind of enhance that role playing aspect, and that's your role playing. You spend so much time. And these games last a while. They're it's narration. You're talking through a story. It lasts hours.
For people, what do you exactly mean by role playing? Because
it
means a lot.
It
could mean a lot of things. It could be scary for a lot of people.
Sure,
Wait, I have to just act who I am.
Yeah, and that is definitely down to the table. Now you can, if you are theatrically minded, you can totally do voices for your character when you're sitting on the couch or the seat, whatever.
Get angry with him.
Get angry with them, and it's this emotion of connecting with a character that is different to you, but because you spend not like a video game where you move around and you slash and you hack.
Yeah.
You are them, and then you say what they want to do, and after a while it becomes what I want to do because you're thinking through them in this situation rather than you.
Yeah, you did create the character from point A to point Z. So in the end, you understand. The person who knows it best is you.
Yeah,
so.
and you really do begin to empathize.
Definitely.
And because of the time that you spend with them, like I said, these sessions, they can take hours. Our sessions normally run to about 4 to 5 hours.
It doesn't have to. 4 or 5 hours is a scary number.
It's a scary number. It's a long time. It does fly. It is just a bunch of your friends hanging out, drinking, eating, having breaks.
So fast. Every time at the end, everyone is like, "Can we play more? Maybe not."
Yeah, I think one other thing that really does contribute is consequence matters.
Consequence matters. I think
your actions have a lot of impact.
It depends. I think in our games, yes. I think it's what we like.
That's true. These games are written.
You have some games don't have that many consequences.
That's true, and everything we're saying really is quite subjective to
I think it
our
is.
game and how we play.
And I think that's one of the big things to take away from Dungeons & Dragons, which is it's so different from any group of players.
There is no right way.
There's no right way to play Dungeons &
Now, a
Dragons.
lot of people have a bad experience because they're in the wrong group. So say, for example, that you want a game that is heavy on the role play. You want consequence. You want character development.
You want story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you're playing with a group who is there to use the system, to use the game as a combat simulator, to manage their resources, their spells, to go into a cave full of goblins and leave a trail of blood. Now, obviously, that
that's
person
fun too.
that is
too.
fun for sure. But if you are this person that doesn't care at combat, I've seen a lot of female gamers a bit tentative about it.
Yeah.
Like, what is this game? Is it just a hack and slash thing? I'm not really interested in that.
Yeah.
And they get put off because the first thing they see is just 3 hours spent rolling dice, killing goblins, which is fun and all, but that's not what everyone's there for.
No.
Now, every game is different, and you might have a DM who's writing story and who's writing events to instigate you to do social things, to save someone, to go and find a cure for a disease to save people. It might be to convince a politician not to do something. And you can do anything, and it therefore can supply all of these different kinds of satisfaction and methods of play, I think. Through social exploring and combat. And
Dungeons and Dragons is for sure, when we talk about like tabletop games, is definitely not. It is a combat game, but it's not just that.
It's a game, and there's combat in it.
Right, exactly.
I don't think it's like for a lot of people, it is the point, and it's fun to have some of it in there. I think that's a choice rather than a definition of the game.
Yeah, I think that's it. I think that's a good definition. Going back to what we were talking earlier, one of the reasons why D&D is now so popular is also the rise of D&D podcast.
It is. So tell me, did you watch a podcast, see it online before you played, or did you do that after?
Actually, I did that after. I started playing with you and some friends for a while, and I think I heard about Critical Role somewhere.
That sounds similar to my story.
Right.
So
and I think we watched it there. And I think I started watching it there, and then I started watching The Adventure Zone, and then different podcasts, and then now I'm just full hooked on it.
Yeah. So I think we really first met and spoke for like a lot for the first time in our first year.
Yeah.
I'd heard of D&D. You'd heard of D&D. A few other people had. I put out a bit of an ad on kind of our accommodations Facebook page saying,
"Oh, you did?
Hey, I want to try playing this new game I've never played before. I don't know anything about it. Who wants to come give it a go?" And I got a bunch of responses. It was there was like 8 of us. Only one person had played before. A guy called a friend of ours called Jack. Who's now a very close friend of ours that we still play with.
It was mayhem.
It was mayhem. But
I remember I was the DM.
You did DM, which made no sense considering that you had no idea what you were doing.
No, I was.
None of us did.
None of us did. I think I went I spent like 3 hours, 4 hours the night before reading stories and stuff.
Yeah.
And I just had an idea of like where you guys will be, but I had no idea why you were there or like where you would go. And I was just like, okay, cool. Let's just go with it.
Yeah, it was chaos. It was good fun.
It was a lot of fun.
And the one guy that had played before kind of just looked on in horror as we butchered this
every
game.
time. Every second he was like, well, actually, and
that's
he was
not
like,
how that works.
It's fine. Let's just roll with it.
And then he said, hey, you guys should check out Critical Role.
Right.
And now that, so I had actually watched a podcast, a stream of D&D before this point. I watched the Rooster Teeth's gaming section, gaming subsection, Achievement Hunter.
Right.
They have a show called Heroes and Halfwits, which is them playing D&D. And I was like, hey, this is pretty cool. And that's where I watched that before we played our first game. Looking back on it, good podcast. I prefer the play style of Critical Role. Now, Critical Role.
So for the listeners, listening to a 4 or 5 hours long podcast might be very scary.
It's intimidating. Don't do it all at once.
No, don't do it all at once.
Break it up.
It's a podcast. You can do whatever you want.
Yeah.
But why would I listen to people play? I mean, I do every day. I did that last night. But for the listeners, why do you think you would spend 4 or 5 hours of your time, maybe cut down, to listen to people play Dungeons and Dragons?
So I think that depends on which podcast you're listening to.
Right.
Now I haven't watched the Adventure Zone, so you talk about that.
I know. Okay.
In a second.
Go ahead about Critical Role.
Critical Role is a group of, in their own words, nerdy-ass voice actors. Now, these include people like Matthew Mercer, Liam O'Brien, Travis Willingham. If you know anything about voice actors who work in animation in terms of anime dubbing, animated things, video games, a lot of the time. These are some big names. I think people might commonly know Matthew Mercer does the voice of McCree in Overwatch.
Yeah, you have a lot of voices.
There's a lot. Check him out.
Rengar in Warcraft. I don't.
Yeah, Travis did motion capture for Thor Ragnarok with the Ice Giants.
He did. I didn't know.
Ashley Johnson.
Ashley
wonderful
Johnson.
Ashley Johnson. She did
from The Last
Ellie.
of Us.
She's Ellie from The Last of Us.
From The Last of Us. She is also
Liam
big.
O'Brien, amongst many other things, wonderfully talented guy. He did motion capture and the voice for Smeagol in one of the recent Lord of the Rings games.
I didn't know. Wow.
So yeah, they get around and play Dungeons and Dragons, and the fun part is not that they're voice actors, although their theatrical background does make it a very interesting and very immersive
for sure.
Narrative experience. The reason I personally watch it is everyone at the table is invested. They care about the characters, and the reason they care is because the story is incredibly well done.
It's made for it.
It absolutely is. It's made to be streamed and listened to. And Matthew Mercer, the dungeon master in this group, does he does a job at making the world, making events and stories to inspire action, and the amount of detail in world building is what inspired me to go from like we played a game to then I then went and made up my own world. My walls are covered in hand-drawn maps.
Andrew had a very weird summer where he just wrote down stuff.
Yeah, I crawled into a cave and I came out with a different world.
In your head, in my head, on paper. Just, hey guys.
Just hand-drawn maps and just pages
upon pages hear about my world?
Random stuff. And I'm like, this creative surge came. I've been into creative writing for a long time. I've rarely had the patience to do it for any long period of time.
Yeah.
And then this medium, I discovered this medium of like creating a world and stories and things, without having to sit down for days just writing a novel. Yeah, and I think Critical Role does a very good job of it showcases the narrative potential of the game, and it showcases what can be achieved if all the players are invested in story and their own characters.
In the word of Matthew Mercer, I think it's a new way of storytelling.
It really is, and it's a way of taking like games themselves are this amazing media of storytelling, and obviously like. Parents look at their kids playing Fortnite, and they're totally right to want to just disown those children. Because
don't be harsh on Fortnite, Andrew.
But games in general are this new and incredibly versatile media of putting you in the place of a character, either kind of in first person, like where you are them, or in a third person thing where you're watching this character go through these experiences. And it's this really amazing new form of media for telling stories. And when you get something like Dungeons and Dragons, which is so versatile,
so much,
it gives the DM complete freedom to create a story in this world and put a group of characters rather than just one player into this world and to immerse them so completely in this narrative.
Yeah,
and they're all there to have fun and to enjoy it, and they really take the ball and they run with it.
Yeah, I think Critical Role is mostly that. The voice acting does help, but I think the most important one is definitely. I think the most important thing in it is definitely the attachment of the players to the story itself,
the story and the characters, and
you can by watching it because you can watch it on YouTube.
So this is not an advert. We're not affiliated, though we would love to be.
God, that would be great.
critroll.com, YouTube/Critical Role, etc. I do recommend you check it out. They are long videos, long podcasts. Break it up.
Just like first episode, watch it. Like during a week.
I recommend it. It's one of the best ways to get an idea of what the game is and what the game can be.
And even if like playing the game is a bit scary to you, or no, I don't want that. Try it, and you'll be actually surprised how it's easy to get into it easily by watching other people.
It is, yeah, and if it doesn't grab you, at least then you're not playing this game because you know what it is and you've decided that you don't want to play it rather than just not knowing what it is.
Exactly.
But no, Critical Role is this long form, very narrative based thing. What is the Adventure Zone?
The Adventure Zone, I think, is definitely the counterpart from Critical Role.
It's the goofy side.
It's the goofy side, but not just that. The Adventure Zone is only a podcast. You can listen on iTunes and those kind of things. It's run by three brothers and their dad, the McElrose brothers and the dad. And it started as a comedy show, as in you play D&D but try to be funny most of the time. It's an hour long, and you follow the stories of like three guys. It's really funny. But I think the Adventure Zone does a great job at telling a story in a non-serious way, I think.
Yeah.
It's the thing where in Critical Role and in D&D, you have very set rule for any kind of situation. Most of the situation.
Mostly, yeah.
Most
like
of the
it's
situation.
more a case of implying or imposing
Right.
relatively realistic physics and kind of
Exactly.
consequent. Like if you want to jump off a cliff, you can totally do that.
But
unless you
break
have
your
any,
legs.
yeah, unless you have something which can let you fly, you will just fall to your death. And most
Right.
of the rules really are centered around making it a more realistic.
And like even just going back to spells, you have a description of the spells. The spell goes like this, and
Yeah, and those limitations are there to make
to not break the game, to not
make it a challenge.
Make it a challenge. You have some tools. What do you do with it?
Yeah.
And I think Adventure Zone does a great job at saying, not screw the rules, but more the rules are there when you need it, and if you want to tell a good story, you don't have to follow the rules.
Yeah.
So the Adventure Zone is like 80 episodes of an hour long each. I started listening it at the beginning of the summer. I'm finished now. And it's like a roller coaster for your heart and your emotions. You either laugh at it or you have very very emotional moments. But since the people that are playing it are all they all know each other so well. The brothers and the dad. They're all very good comedians. It just you are with them in this story, in this journey, and it's very different from Critical Role. I think when Critical Role is very down to earth when it comes to the characters and to the story some of the time when in low levels and those kind of things. In the Adventure Zone, you go, there is no limitation. You want cars? There are cars. Elevators? Sure. It's a fantasy world that you created. Sure, there are elevators.
Yeah, like
why does the world should make sense if you're telling the story? It's your story. The world makes sense in the story itself, but it shouldn't stay in the limitation of whatever world it's supposed to be in.
Yeah, like I think Critical Role is. I love Critical.
I love Critical Role.
I love it mostly because it is this gritty telling of this fantasy tale in this kind of fairly classical fantasy setting. It feels more Lord of the Rings than
it is. It is very much Lord of the Rings or Elric, or what else? Just very fantasy that everyone knows.
And I would if I had to give it a genre, it would be pretty much straight fantasy. And now the characters stick to their the players stick to their characters
Right.
well throughout the whole thing. And through that, you see them confront different emotions, different situations, and same with the Adventure Zone, you laugh and you cry with these. And like the characters,
definitely.
you can draw parallels between yourself and these characters going through these situations which you would never be in as a normal person on Earth. Which can be a really interesting way of.
To go back to what I said, Critical Role is also a very funny podcast. I think the very big difference is
I think we agree here. Like
right.
Critical Role is this. It is straight fantasy, and there's drama, there's romance, there's comedy, but it's not a comedy show.
No,
I think the Adventure Zone
is
is comedy.
You have like a moment where one of the players would be like wait like 5 seconds, 10 seconds just to come up with a good punchline when he uses the spell to kill the monster. And you're like, okay, and then he goes saying like the punchline, which I can't say on radio before 9 p.m. But it's the kind of thing where, or even like he will make references of things from our world in the game itself, and you wouldn't be able to do that in Critical Role, those kind of things, because no one would understand. But for the joke and for that moment, in the adventure zone, they will allow it.
Yeah, there's no holding back on going meta for the sake of being funny.
No, it's all about being funny. It's all about being funny and telling a good story.
Yeah. So yeah, I think like shows like that have seen an influx of people that see them, and the second people watch them and they feel that emotional connection to them, they begin to understand what the game actually is and what it can be.
What it can be,
and they immediately start telling their friends, "Oh, watch this show."
And I want to play it like that. I want to play it a bit,
and that inspires people to play it and learn what it is. I think that is very, in a large part, responsible for the resurgence that it has had in terms of popularity.
So of course, like Critical Role and the Adventure Zone are a very, very big monolith of D&D podcasts. They're not the first one. They're not the one that brought it into the idea, but they're the one that made it, I think, through. I think you had podcasts that came back with D&D.
Yeah.
Because D&D had different edition, and the one previously from the actual one, which is the fifth one, the actual one. The one before that was a bit bad on the rules, and
so like any game, D&D has editions,
updates,
way back when there was first edition, and like any game which would have updates and sequels. With D&D, everyone's already bought the books and the paper, so these are kind of like, you can kind of consider them as like patch notes and new
basic
and sequels.
And the patch notes basically of the last one was really bad, and a lot of people stopped playing or started playing older edition, and you had a bit of the death of D&D during the end of the 90s and the beginning of the 2000s, and you had a resurgence of D&D with the fifth edition, and the new podcast that came around 2010 and a bit before that.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that is due to the fifth edition, which is the current edition of the game, is probably the simplest to play. In previous editions, there was a written down rule for everything. Like, I want to swim and carry a body. There was a rule for that.
But also, I think it's the easiest to play, but also the most turned towards storytelling.
Yeah, exactly. Like it is there to provide a framework of rules rather than this is how every single thing is done, which makes it so much easier to tell a fluid story, to keep the momentum going.
They just tell you whatever you want to do, or depending on what the DM think. There are ways to do whatever you want without having basic rules.
It leaves it very open to different groups making the game what they want it to be.
Because fourth edition was very combat based. Mostly combat based. You had a lot of rules about combat, very complicated. And 5e decided to go no, combat is good, but D&D is before.
It's more than that.
It's more than that. It's a storytelling thing. But yeah, we're both great fans of D&D.
Yeah.
For any listeners out there, try it. If you're listening to us already, you might be a bit nerdy.
If you're still listening, you must be vaguely interested or incredibly bored. Either way, you've got the time to spare.
The time to spare.
Check it out if you don't know what it is. If by some miracle someone's playing that used to play but stopped for some reason, get back into it.
It's great. Find people, tell people. But no. Play, guys. It's really fun. On that note, we'll leave you for a break.
Yeah.
Put some music, have a chill vibe, and we'll see you then. All right.
And we're back.
Back on.
Alex, I need to complain to you for a minute.
Yeah, you tell me that. What is it?
So we're in Manchester.
We are. It rains all the time. Is that
We're
your complaint?
students.
Yeah, we are.
Which means we're poor.
Yeah, we are.
So in Manchester this morning, it was about 2 degrees. Now,
God.
that's not that cold. There are places far colder. Now, my issue, and the reason I want to complain, is because these other places that get to minus 50, whatever. Yeah, like, it gets cold. You know, I've been in Moscow in December. It's really, really cold.
Yeah, I've been in Vancouver in December. God damn, it's cold.
They are prepared for it.
They are prepared
They have
for it, that's for
insulation.
sure. Yeah,
And they have heating.
You've seen me this morning. I was a snowman. I had like everything on me.
You did. And
Scarf,
you saw
gloves.
me in my wrapped up like a burrito in a duvet
Black
before I
Fury
left. Now, I have an issue with my housemates. They are cold-hearted lizard people.
God.
Because
Why? Did they lift the door open?
No, they don't like us putting the heating on.
Oh my God.
Because it's money,
All of them?
right? Yeah, they're lizard people.
The lizard people. God.
Which means while 2 degrees might not be the coldest temperature in the world, when you have insulation from the 50s, and your housemates refuse to use the heating, which
But
barely works
why?
anyway, money.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense.
Like, we could afford it. We've budgeted for it. But they want to save more money.
Okay.
And therefore, my bedroom was about 2
Put
degrees.
yours on.
Huh?
Can you put yours on?
No, because we all pay for the same. We all pay for the same bills.
Okay, yeah, fair enough.
But yeah, no, that's it. Like,
That
my
was it?
complaint is just that
Bad
it's
complaint.
cold,
Alright,
and
alright.
I'm unhappy about it.
Just come to my place. Just sleep on the sofa. It's fine.
Not bad, man.
It's hot.
We'll discuss this later.
Right.
But for now, I want to talk a bit more seriously than we have earlier today.
Right.
About D&D and things. Well, you know, my passion for D&D is serious.
Well, I hope so.
So yesterday evening, I finished playing a game I've been playing for a while.
Yeah.
I stopped for a few weeks, and I decided, hey, I've been playing this for a while. I'm gonna finish it.
But without my help, you would not be able to finish it because there was this one puzzle you couldn't do.
You did help me with one puzzle.
Exactly.
Now, the
you
game
were stuck.
The game is called Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice.
Great game. Great game.
Now, at this point, we are going to be talking a bit about mental illness and psychosis. So, trigger warning: if that is a problem for you, tune out. Go listen to some chill music. We're not going to be discussing.
Listen to the other episodes on iTunes. You know.
Yeah,
it's like
we're not going to be discussing much else. We're going to be talking a bit about the symptoms of it and a bit about representation of it. If that's too close to home for you, now's the time to tune out.
All right.
So, I guess that's a bit of a spoiler for the topic of this conversation. So, Hellblade, to give it a brief synopsis of the game,
Yeah. Do tell.
you are a Celtic warrior called Senua, and she
A
is
strong
this,
woman.
she is this Celtic warrior in kind of the 8th, 9th century Scotland, who is exiled from her people. Her people are then massacred by Vikings, and she goes on a vision quest into Viking hell, then like mythical
Basically.
hellscape, to save the soul of her murdered love that was killed by these invading Vikings. Pretty standard premise, nothing too bad, except that the game is effectively set in her psyche, and she suffers from intense psychosis.
Damn.
Now,
dark.
for those immediately who aren't familiar, psychosis is different to psychopathy. So a psychopath, which exhibits a lack of empathy and things like that, they are different things. Psychosis most frequently exhibits 2 main symptoms. Now, obviously, mental illness is different for everyone. This does not encompass everything, and we are not experts, so do not take anything we say as professional advice or anything like that. Psychosis most commonly exhibits things like hallucinations and delusions, seeing things that aren't there, hearing voices, seeing patterns with no evidence behind them, and all of these things feel 100% real. So I want to talk a little bit today about how the game represents that, the importance of doing so, and that kind of thing.
All right. So her lover is dead, right?
Yes.
She goes in hell to fetch it back, fetch the soul back.
Yes.
All right. So how does she become psychotic before he dies, or
So the game
because
alludes.
of those events?
So the game alludes to her having psychotic tendencies before
Right.
these events, which is why she's exiled. In Celtic culture, in ancient Britain, people who suffered from mental illness like that were called Gelts. These people were exiled, and these people were people that faced trauma in battle, and really anyone who exhibited these kind of outward-facing symptoms of mental illness, and they were sent out to the wilds to seek penance from the gods. Now, obviously, we know that obviously these are mental illnesses, and we treat them as such. Now, she was one of these Gelts, and when she returns from this journey, she finds her tribe killed by Vikings or
Oh
Northmen,
God, Vikings.
which pushes her over the edge into a full state of psychosis.
All right.
Now, the
okay.
game, it's unclear. And I think it's a mixture of the fact that you're in real
Hell.
real life
I think yeah.
and things constructed by her psyche.
So wait. She is not really in hell.
I don't know.
Okay, so you don't know.
You-
Okay.
As
I mean,
far
the
as
story
she
doesn't
is
tell.
concerned, she is.
Right.
And a lot of the point of the not the point of the game, but a lot of the setting of the game, a lot of the message of the game is that the things that she sees for her are real.
Right.
And you don't need to, like, as long as you understand that for her it's real, then you
Mhm.
can empathize with that.
Yes.
And that's a similar message to
Yeah.
people in real life that suffer from this and see hallucinations. It's not so much a case of they're wrong, but that you can't see their reality.
Yeah.
Which is a complicated concept.
I mean, you can understand or try to understand, but
You can try.
to know the feeling is very much impossible.
Absolutely, and I think we discussed earlier how D&D is this new medium of
Storytelling,
games and
yeah.
storytelling, and I think that medium does a very, very good job of putting you in this character and then showing you
yeah,
things
in
from her
Hellblade.
perspective, in a manner that does a pretty good job of kind of showing you.
But so how would they do that? Because
So
showing mental illness through a video game, you would have to have some mechanics to it.
for sure,
Something that how do you translate those psyche ideas into a game, into a 2D basically? I mean, in your TV.
yeah. So that's a massive challenge, and so the game developer, a company called Ninja Theory,
Right.
spent several years developing this game, animating it, making it, and right from the beginning, they knew they wanted to make this game featuring this mental illness, and obviously that's a very dangerous territory to go on because you risk, you risk kind of people being turned away because of a stigma towards mental health, things like that. You have the danger of it becoming tokenistic of people with mental illness and not an accurate
Yeah.
representation of that.
Yeah.
So
Definitely.
Ninja Theory worked with doctors, mental health professionals, experts in psychosis. They spent a long time during the development of the game talking to people who hear voices, who have psychosis,
Right, so
showing them
they-
aspects of the game and saying, hey, does this feel right? Does this feel like your experiences? So these people that worked on the game, they obviously looked at it afterwards, and at least people that suffered for a very long time with psychosis believe this game does a very good job of
Right.
communicating a lot of these experiences, which is as good a testament as I think you can possibly get with this kind of thing.
But I think my question was more
What does it do to do that?
right. What is it? What are the tools to do that?
Yeah,
What do they
so-
use to make you feel that way?
So they have, like, pretty much through the entire game, you hear voices.
Right.
Voices of what Senua thinks are spirits of her past or fragments of her own mind, which comment on what she's doing. And this is used both as a tool narratively to point you towards different objectives and things, to point out
But
clues.
to also learn about her
Um,
backstory.
It teaches you about her backstory.
Right.
She hears the voice of a man she used to know called Jeruth, who is a Celtic character that he was kidnapped by Vikings, taken back to Viking territory as a slave, but then escaped to the Orkney Islands and became a monk.
Okay.
Now this character who has been to the Northman's hell and back is this kind of voice in her head which kind of guides her through, and he's your guide that gives you a lot of the story.
Okay.
So you hear voices throughout the
Fine.
game, and these voices can be doing anything from screaming at you to telling you that you're doing things wrong, to encouraging you when you're failing, and I think the way they recorded it was very interesting. They had a number of voice actors circling and moving around a binaural microphone, which is
Wow.
a microphone that has
Yeah,
basically
atmospheric.
human ears. And
Yeah, the one used for ASMR.
yeah.
Oh, God.
And according to people that hear voices every day, it does quite a good job of kind of replicating that feeling.
Right. Okay.
So aside from that, it's relatively easy in a game to portray hallucinations as reality. Obviously, you just animate different things, which are disturbing. Like the game made me uncomfortable at times.
I think the few bits I've seen you play were very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I think what's pretty impressive is how do you translate panic into a game?
Yeah, for sure.
So
and they do that very well with everything from lighting to level design, all the way to sound. Like Senua's panting and kind of exasperated breath and gasps, excellently recorded. The voice actor or actress that did the motion capture and voice for Senua, interestingly enough, not a voice actor. She was
what do you mean?
an editor, I believe.
Oh, it's one of the people working on the game.
Yeah, so when they were developing the motion capture techniques...
It does happen a lot.
Yeah, when they were developing the motion capture techniques, they used this lady as kind of the test piece for the role, and like doing the stuff with the face filming animation setup, the motion capture suit, and that whole time they realized,
impressive technology, guys.
She's already perfect for this role. So they used her, and she does an amazing performance. With like the panics, the screams. There are sections of the level when you're running from monsters that you can never see, that can only get to you in dark areas. So you have to rush from an area of light to another area of light. And as you're running, you get this flashing red light, and this monster's behind you, and you hear it, and you're running, and it gets scary. It gets.
Oh God.
It does a really good job of conveying that panic. It's there.
Not for the faint heart. Not for the faint of heart.
No, and the game obviously at the beginning has big warnings for panic.
I'm sure
anxiety,
it does.
All these kinds of things.
How would you? So for people that don't know about mental health problems like this, how would you sell the game? How would you say play the game? Because a part of it are from learning from it.
For sure.
Because it's just if it's just a game about learning from it, sure. You can also read about it.
Yeah. So
how would you What's the? I think.
Like, why should you play the game?
Why should you play the game?
Well, for a start, the game's fun. Like,
Game's fun. Okay.
Like the puzzles are interesting. The puzzles actually link in with the experiences that sufferers of psychosis have with delusions, which can involve making patterns and seeing patterns in the world that either just others can't see or that aren't there.
Right.
Now that gives rise to one of the major kind of puzzle mechanics of the game, where you have to try and line up kind of debris and just trees and things in the world around you to make it the shape of a rune to unlock a gate.
Oh, whoa. That's pretty complicated.
Pretty complicated, and it does a good job of it's a good puzzle mechanic by itself. And the fact that it also communicates some of that, seeing patterns in places.
You see things that are not there.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
You read into things that are not readable.
And I think as you start to get used to these puzzles, you actually start seeing patterns in places that you wouldn't normally have seen them that are needed. Like, these are the answers to these puzzles.
Right.
And some people and some sufferers with psychosis actually become very successful people using what are sometimes delusions, but sometimes are very, very kind of intuitive at picking up
subtle
patterns.
Hints. Yeah,
and seeing these patterns with other people with kind of an ordinary brain wouldn't pick up on.
It feels very holistic,
Holistic, it's
one
one of the
cases like you have a thread and things connecting each other.
Yeah, and obviously in some cases people see real patterns and can make something good of that. In many cases, it's a nightmare to live with.
Right. Of course, I'm sure.
Now the game, as I said earlier, it makes you uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But in doing so, it makes you empathize with Senua going through this journey, what she's fighting, and you empathize with her just as a character, not just as I'm learning about psychosis. It's I'm playing a game and I'm empathizing with this character and I want to see her succeed.
Right, because do you want to see her succeed? So you love the character when you play it. You know, you have some
for
games.
sure.
You have some games where going through the story and you're in the character is maybe in a gray area.
Yeah, but like she is.
I mean, she's
passionate. I think that's one of the most things
right?
I enjoy. And like in narrative storytelling, one of the things I love to see is raw passion.
Yeah, raw emotions.
And this scared but vicious girl fighting through hell, and she has nothing left to lose. She is just fighting with everything she's got to save this soul. And the fighting in the game is satisfying. It's
Right.
not super difficult. There's like 3 controls. It's very simple. There's block, parry, light attack, fast attack, sprint. That's it.
I mean, yeah, simple mechanics can make all.
But yeah,
the
the way
entirety
it's
of the game.
animated is super satisfying. Like you can do like flying jumps, and it's super simple to do.
I think if I remember correctly, it's very fluid.
Very, very fluid.
It's not. You don't have cutting animation. It just goes on and on and on.
It like there's
Very
no
fluid.
difference between the cutscene graphics and game graphics.
Right.
Like you see some games which say like, "Oh, this is in-game footage," and they show you a cool trailer. I have never
Those
seen a
games.
game. I've never seen a game that does better than this.
Right.
At,
Well, you also told me you can take a picture whenever you want.
yeah, it's true, and you can pause the game at any moment, get rid of any kind of on-screen stuff, control the graphics, add effects.
Which is very funny because I remember there was this when you played at your house and you showed me there was this cinematic with Fenrir.
Yes.
And then you just stopped it, and then you took a photo, and it's very weird. Like just at any moment you can do it, even during like
because
cutscenes.
there's no difference really between gameplay and cutscene aside from you lose control of the character. Everything looks the same.
And camera. Yeah.
And at any moment in the game you can
Which is great.
stop it and capture a visual moment. And the game is visually gorgeous. Like it uses the Unreal 4 engine.
It is beautiful. But Unreal 4 engine, if used properly, can make like
it's
beautiful.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's terrifying. The monsters are these there's a bunch of different ones. But they all look amazing.
Yeah.
And there's so many points where like as you're going through, you're killing things. Mid fight, you do a cool flying attack with your glowing sword. And if you're thinking about it, then you can pause at that instant and capture that moment, and it's
Right.
it's gorgeous.
Yeah, that's great.
Like it's
when you
almost
do something cool, you want to maybe have a
almost
picture of it.
worth playing the game twice, just once to play the game,
And
and
it's like
again to capture all of these moments because it is gorgeous.
That's cool. That's cool. All
I
right.
think in terms of like your question of like how would I sell the game?
Yeah.
One, it's a fun game. Like
Right.
you empathize with the character.
Which is in the end the most important one, which is stories are fun, and I'm sure you know a lot of people would argue with me that a game can also be just stories like
for sure.
like a lot of games. But apart from that, from a game like this on PS4, I mean no, you played it on Xbox.
I
But
played
it's on PS4, Xbox, and PC, I think. And most of it you need to have fun playing it.
For sure, and my thoughts on this. I think you can have games which are just fun,
Yeah.
but a game without meaningful story is not a game that I want to play.
For sure.
And this definitely falls in that. It's fun to play. The puzzles are not impossible, but they're interesting. The fights are not super difficult, but they are fluid. They're intuitive, and they feel good to do.
Right.
And on top of all of this, you get this weird, discomforting experience of this condition.
Okay.
Which is why I think it does such a good job, because it doesn't feel like it's the point of the game.
It's a very unusual journey to take while playing a game, I think.
Absolutely.
I think it's one of the main points from Hellblade is you won't get the same feeling twice from any other game.
No, I don't think so. And what's quite interesting is like
it is a very particular game.
they made the game knowing that this character has this condition, and a lot of this game is going to be conveying that accurately and representing it well, not in a way that portrays stigma, but in a way that inspires empathy and understanding for
Right.
it, which is,
Which is what they want.
we could talk
you
for a
know,
whole separate hour about the importance of discussing
empathy
mental
and-
health and getting rid
Sure.
of that stigma and discussing it.
Sure.
I think I described it in a small review, that you can see a broken arm, but telling someone that has never heard a voice in their head what that's like is nearly impossible.
Psyche and mental health problems are. I think when you see someone dealing with it, you can maybe try to understand it, but
If you try, a lot of people don't.
No, that's for sure. But like if someone in your close circle, I mean, I did have that experience. But also it's not the same thing. Trying to understand someone that has mental problem, health problem is very hard.
It's very difficult.
Very difficult. I mean, you can. I know from personal experience, you can try your best, and you might not get it. And I think it's the most important thing is how do you translate that feeling of problems and all those things into a person that doesn't have those, and how would you make understand that you should feel empathy for those people. They're dealing with a lot of problems, and I think Hellblade does a good job of that, and I think Hellblade is a game that was, I wouldn't say needed, but it's a game that I'm glad that it's out there.
I would disagree.
You would say it needed? It's
yeah.
needed?
So I also have I'm not going to name any names, but I have people that are very close to me that have gone through a variety of problems like this. And if anyone listening, if you know anyone or have gone through this yourself, you'll know just how important it is to get rid of the stigma, to talk about it. And you don't necessarily need to understand it. And I think one of the things, so for example, I've never broken a bone.
Yeah.
So you could describe to me to the end of the earth, like what it's like to break a
yeah.
bone. I will never, until I have broken one, I will never know what it's like to feel that cracking of the bone.
For sure.
Which is exactly the same as if someone has a mental health condition that you do not have or have not experienced, it will be extremely difficult for you to understand completely what that's like.
That's for sure. For sure.
The point is not to understand, but it is to recognize that it is real and to respect it and to empathize with it, which is
that is. You're right.
And there's plenty of people
of
which
course.
Get defensive immediately and be like, why should I, they're all snowflakes and all that kind of crap. But
Oh god.
it's the same thing as, it's not a case of they want
Some people.
we need more attention on mental health than physical health. It's just that there is so little care for mental health in comparison to it, and it needs to be equal at least.
It needs to be equal. No, for sure.
I think a game like this that it sparks this kind of conversation. I think it does. I think one of the amazing things about it is that it uses the medium of a game in a way that I haven't seen done before, and I haven't seen any other medium, whether it be film, book, whatever else. I've never seen a more accurate portrayal of a mental health condition.
But I think you're right. It was something where you kind of needed it, as in, it was, you don't have a lot of like, the video game medium is a very popular medium and can touch a lot of people. And I think that's why, taking back what I said, I think that's why it was, you're right. It was needed because it touched so many people, and it has this, worldwide recognition as a great game, and so many people in the game industry and fan of games, and so many people played it. It has this reach that taught a lot of everyone that played it now know and can feel empathy for.
Like,
people
hopefully,
dealing
if
with
you've
those
played the
problems.
game or even watched a playthrough, whatever, it gives you some insight into.
But do they specifically talk about the problem, or do they just?
So during the game?
Yeah, during the game.
No. You experience
Okay.
everything from this scared young girl's perspective,
Right.
and the entire game is based around you experiencing what she feels and experiences.
So do you learn, like, can you put a name on it if you just play the game?
I think yes. If you understand already psychosis,
Right.
then it would not be difficult to kind of diagnose Senua with that kind of condition. What I found quite interesting is, as someone who has no experience with it myself, and beforehand I was absolutely ignorant about what psychosis was. It made me feel uncomfortable. It made me feel, I guess, as close as I could get to feeling what psychosis is like without having it. Included in the game, there is a whole 15-20 minute video on them talking about how they made the game, about who they consulted about mental health problems and how to accurately portray that.
Okay.
And that was super interesting as well.
That's great.
So even if you don't play the game, I recommend that you look up the making of Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice. And I think what I hope mostly, and why I think this was needed, is not only the fact that this game will touch people and help people empathize and understand this kind of condition and try and give it a bit more respect and want to understand it, but also that it will show other people that make games that you can use this medium to do this.
I think
and inspire more people. More people to use this medium. And with this game, they approached it like, this is the story, we want to portray this. I hope more games do that. I hope more games try and either as central to the story or just as well as the story.
Yeah, I think it's
use that medium to try and convey that kind of empathy.
It's the recognition of the medium of the video game that is also really great in Hellblade. It has I'm trying to find the word. No, I think it's this recognition of the medium and just trying to push it where to what it can be.
Yeah, for
it's
sure.
Not just it's not just a game where you kill people with a gun or a game where you slay demons. It can be also a bringer and a portrayer of things that should be known about to the world, and it can be.
It's learning what the medium can do, and I hope it inspires people to use its ability to do so. And obviously, not every game is going to have a character with an accurately portrayed mental health disorder, but in the same way that in film, you want to see a diverse cast where appropriate, and you want to see representation of everyone in everything. That would be ideal, for people to see in media of all kinds. There's someone like me. That is incredibly important for people. So to have a game which discovers its ability in this medium to do so, I really, really hope that I think makes an impact there.
Being able to portray everyone, so everyone can feel recognized in video games.
For sure.
Is very important. It's a bit like that feeling from the 90s or from the 80s when comic books were a very big thing, and they tried to portray. You had this wave of new superheroes in the comics where they like DC and Marvel tried to portray as many different type of people as possible, portraying different mental health problems, like in Legion, the character Legion, or just try to portray as many so as many people can feel recognized in that medium.
I think from at least our perspective as relatively privileged,
very much so.
white males, so. Obviously the second we're born, we see ourselves represented everywhere. We are in every TV show, every movie.
I think the underrepresentation is something that is very hard to get.
So I think it just like anything else that we haven't experienced, it's important for us to try to understand and respect the need of others to feel that.
Respect is the word I was looking for.
And I think, so I hope the game makes impact and pushes more people to represent that.
No, it makes me want to, try it.
You should play it. It's not a long game.
No, how many hours do you spend on it? What's the
5 or 6
time? 5 or 6 hours.
Yeah, it's not a long game.
All right, okay. I hope it's worth the price. It was 5 or 6 hours.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I'd buy it again.
You'll buy it again.
Yeah.
If I could, I would.
So, yeah.
I mean, you can.
Aside from all of this, it's a beautiful game. It plays really nice. It feels good.
It's a good story.
And it's a really cool story, especially kind of in a world where God of War 4 has just come out. We've got Thor in the Marvel universe doing his stuff. It does broach into that kind of Norse mythology, but on a much darker side.
And
it represents something which I
Metal
think,
side of it.
yeah, and it represents a lot of this mental health stuff, which I think is super, super important. And I love the way the game does it, and you kind of, as you're playing, you don't notice it.
Right.
It feels
Right.
like this is just the game, this is just the
Yeah.
character.
Yeah.
And then at the end of it, you're like, oh damn, I've just come as close to experiencing psychosis as I can without having psychosis. Oh, that's what that's like. I think that realization is a scary one and is an
For
important
sure.
one for people to have.
For sure.
Um,
But it's in those cases when it's such an important matter, and when you go from zero to full, like not full understanding, but comprehension and feeling about what they go through, and if you go from zero to just kind of understanding it, yeah, it is a lot to take in.
it is, yeah. So I think we'll wrap up there.
Sure.
Leave you with some music.
It
yeah,
was great.
yeah.
Good talk, Andrew.
Yeah, sorry that went a bit more
Very-
serious and stuff in that, but I think it's a testament.
I mean, you finished it last night.
It did. I think it's a testament to the game that I finished it last night and I had to talk about it.
Right, I had to talk about it. But it's good. I think Hellblade is a game that it's a AAA game. I wouldn't say it was underappreciated, but it's a game will always need coverage. It's a game that needs to be talked about.
Yeah. I think aside from the game, just the things that it does, it needs broadcasting more. And I hope it does get picked up.
Yeah.
So cool. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening. Just a reminder, if you missed the podcast from last week or the week before, they're all on SoundCloud, iTunes, and YouTube. The channel name is Chasing Tales.
That's TALES.
Yes, do not.
Stories.
Yeah. For stories. So yeah, check that out if you want some more. And we'll leave you with some chill beats.
Yeah. So thanks for listening, everyone. Listen to each other. If one of your friends goes through this and
Yes. Very important.
be there for them, and like we said, you probably won't understand, but respect each other's needs, and yeah, just be there for each other. Like you'd carry a friend's bags if they broke their arm. This is exactly the same. Thanks for listening, guys. See you next week.